G'day everyone and welcome to the Doctor Who show for the month of February. I'm Rob.
And I'm Doc.
And that's right folks, our special guest for the month of February is Doc Hume from the Diddly Dum podcast. Hello Doc.
Hello Rob. I never like criticising another podcast, but I did think that it was high time that you had someone on the podcast with a bit of political savvy for a change, you know? So I thought I'd agreed to come on.
And hello to Dave, listening overseas. Now, Doc, your last appearance on the show was, I can't believe this, it was the start of 2017 and we were talking about 1970s Weetabix and Typhoo giveaways.
Was this when you were still Who Was? Or was this once you changed over to the Doctor Who show?
Yeah, we were the Doctor Who show by then, and we were doing the Whotiques Roadshow segment. And I know this to be true because your appearance before that was on the Doctor Who show episode 11. I did my research, Doc, on November 27th of 2016. So that's even longer.
Maybe done twice.
Yes, you have. Co-host once, and a guest on Whotiques Roadshow. Yeah.
That sounds unusually generous of me.
Well, it's good to have you on from the fourth best Doctor Who podcast.
Well, I remember we had big plans. I think it's from you inveigled me onto your podcast by saying, sometime we'll have to do a big Pertwee era retrospective together, and it never happened.
That's right, Project Pertwee. We were going to do that. And I did actually end up watching a lot of Pertwee in the end, which was the plan, and I really got into him in the end. Because that was the problem, I wasn't into him to begin with.
On the promise of that's why I started watching right from an Unearthly Child onwards.
Yes, and
thinking,
blogging.
I'll eventually get to Pertwee, and then I can go through it. And Rob, and you just ditched me like a squeezed out tube of toothpaste, Rob. There was I waiting at the church, and he left me in the lurch.
Oh dear. Let's quickly move on. Speaking of podcasts, I've got a couple of quick Apple Podcast reviews to do. Doc, we do these at the start of episodes if people have written into Apple Podcasts during the past month or so. So, the first one is great, concise and fun. 5 stars from Bauer3000. Thank you, Bauer. He says, you guys are bang on. Always well-structured and engaging podcasts. Your opinions are well thought through and backed up. Agree with you guys most of the time as well. Plus, I love your accents. Greetings from the other side of the world from Who Time YouTube channel. Isn't that nice?
Oh, how sweet. And that's from
Yeah.
Mr. Robert Irwin, Esquire.
Not true. The second one, we'll get through these nice and quick. Great Doctor Who pod, 5 stars. Well worth a listen. Rob and Dave continue to provide new angles and insights on a venerable show. Whether it's the monthly show, hot takes on the new series, or even the occasional trip to a different show entirely, they maintain a positive and fond spin to the show, whilst never paper over the flaws in the paper-mache monster. Suitable for the crusty old fan or the 12-year-old obsessive. Keep it up, guys, from Andy J. Canberra, obviously from Australia. Lovely, thank you, Andy.
Oh, I see. So now you're getting praise which coincidentally originates in Canberra, are you? Oh, I wonder who said that.
Just a coincidence, Doc. Just a coincidence. But yeah, that's nice. That's very nice. So thank you for those. And if you out there want to write us a 5-star review or any kind of review on iTunes, please do and read it at the top of our next monthly show. All right, moving on. Let's get into some news, Doc. What do you reckon?
I'm raring to go.
All right, these 4 stories are in no particular order. I'm going to kick off with one Big Finish related, and that's the 8th Doctor is about to do a series with the Curator, the Tom Baker character from the 50th anniversary. Had you seen this news, Doc?
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about it, really. It's, Big Finish is pretty voracious these days, isn't it? They've got such a large output. They almost need to swallow any opportunity they can. I think that the Tom's cameo on the 50th anniversary Day of the Doctor managed to work because I think we were so excited to see him that we thought, we'll brush aside whether this actually fits in or works or not. But then I think this fits in what's been happening recently over the haunting of Villa Diodati.
In what way?
In that, people have been saying this has completely driven a steamroller over a particular Big Finish story where I think the Doctor travels with Mary Shelley for a while.
Yeah, the Silver Turk.
Yeah, and I used to listen to them, and so it used to cost me money, because I'm a bit of a completist whenever I do anything, and so I can't just say, "Oh, I'll dip into it." Until I eventually gave up on Big Finish. So that sounds rude, doesn't it? Until I eventually stopped listening to Big Finish, and I wonder if possibly it's unavoidable now. They put out so much, and they've got so many. Should we call them threads? I.e., you've got the Fifth Doctor travelling with Nyssa and Tegan, and you've got the Fifth Doctor perhaps travelling with Jamie, and the Eighth Doctor doing this, and that. That they're always going to be looking out for what historical character haven't we done yet. So TV is always probably going to have to. But I think the TV show needs to take priority. What do you think of it?
Yeah, look, I own a lot of Big Finish because I was collecting all the Eighth Doctor CDs originally, and I went a long way with those. And in more recent times, whenever they've had really good sales, like here's a story for 99 cents, they'll be selling it in the UK for 99p, and they'll sell it here for 99 cents, which is actually cheaper than 99p. It's actually half the price. But anyway, putting that aside, I've bought a lot of stuff on sale, and I have this very huge library available digitally, and I can just download and listen at any time. And 9 times out of 10, I don't, because I find it so impenetrable, and it's quite a big thing to listen to, a 1 hour, 1.5 hour story.
Yeah.
And I think, well, that's only one out of several dozen I might have for that Doctor. Do I really want to go down that rabbit hole? Do I want to start with that? And often I think no, and I don't listen to them. So it's a very strange relationship I have with Big Finish. But anyway, the synopsis for this box set, Stranded, is the TARDIS is gone. Stranded in one time and place, the Doctor, Liv and Helen seek refuge in Baker Street. I don't know whether that's some sort of Sherlock crossover I'm missing there or whatever, or to reference to Tom Baker or something. But the house they have has changed. They now have neighbours, not all of them welcoming, and someone has a dire warning for the future. The Doctor and friends face their greatest challenge yet, living one day after another in 2020 London. Doc, as someone who lives in 2020 London, is that your greatest challenge day to day?
Oh, you're telling me. It's I better not say anything, because I might offend my nearest and dearest.
Aww.
Yes.
Yes. All I'll add about this is, in terms of the curator, I think less is more, and I think just seeing a bit of him in the 50th special was probably enough. And here, I don't know what to make of it, to be honest, but I will say that in the 8th Doctor novels from BBC Books back in the late 90s, early 2000s, the 8th Doctor got stranded from his TARDIS and had to live through all of 20th century, essentially London and surrounds. So it's kind of already been done in the books for me, although that was a long time ago, and I know a lot of fans haven't read those books, but it does seem to be treading similar territory.
I think Big Finish's argument is probably, if less is more, just think how much more would be.
Exactly.
I'm not keen on these things where in a single, stroke of a pen, you add several centuries to the Doctor's lifetime. That was happening a lot in Stephen Moffat's era, wasn't it? Suddenly he'd be 1,000 years older. I don't find it convincing. I would hate to actually have to sit through the Doctor living through the whole of the 19th century. It would get a bit boring in the end. But I don't find it convincing, that sort of, this has happened, just deal with it.
Yeah. At the same time, though, it's almost the opposite to how the Davison Doctor appeared to only live 3 years, because his era is so clear-cut in terms of the companions he's with and what he's doing, that this, 750-odd-year-old guy only gets 3 years out of his fourth regeneration. Shall we move on?
Okie dokie. Reports in the Radio Times that rumours that Mandip Gill may be leaving the series. So I was going to put on a false expression of sadness. Are Yaz and Ryan leaving the TARDIS behind? This is the rumour that she's disappearing. I think they caught up with her at the Radio Times covers party, which I imagine is...
what a salubrious event that would be.
Where she says she doesn't actually know if her character will be making another appearance. I'd love to come back, Mandip Gill told RadioTimes.com, but again, because of the secrecy, no one ever knows what's going on. So, what do you think of this? Both in the sense of likeliness and in the sense of whether it's welcome or not.
Well, I think I've been saying that we've got to see some change, surely, this series with companions. And if not this series, then in the Christmas or New Year's special, whatever that may be. Because it would be just bizarre to me for Jodie to have 3 companions, which is already one too many, and carry them through 3 whole series. That just seems ridiculous. I'd like to see her jettison all 3 this series, or maybe 2 in the finale and 1 in the Christmas special, and start her final series with someone new. I always say I'd love to see a different companion each series, so even having these 3 for 2 series has been more than enough for me. Even Graham, who I particularly like, I think he's got to go as well. I think they've all got to go.
I'm not sure if I can get Doctor Who anymore until it sounds cruel, but until Ryan and Yaz leave the TARDIS.
Oh, really?
I do find them an obstacle now to actually enjoying the show. I can't. It stops me. It stops my suspension. Excuse me, my suspension of disbelief. I'm constantly being yanked out of it by what I regard as mediocre characterization and pretty mediocre acting. And so while I wish them all the luck in the world, I wouldn't mind them disappearing at all. But because they've said, haven't they, that Tosin Cole has been taken on by this US... Is it one of these courtroom drama series?
Apparently so I think we can tick him off for sure. I think he's gone.
So I wish good luck to them, and I suspect they are going. I'm wondering whether they end up having Captain Jack coming back as the companion next series, which might bring a bit of life to it.
Oh, I think it would.
Yeah, although then I couldn't really, having complained about having companions who can't act, it would be hypocritical of me to push the idea of Captain Jack coming back.
Ow! And on that note, let's move on.
I really like him. I'm more on Doctor Who than on Torchwood, I must admit. But you don't expect subtle histrionic moments from John Barrowman, do you?
No, that's
hysterical
exactly right.
moments, but not histrionic. Sorry, Rob, please go on.
Yes. Talking of Series 13, where we may end up with some new companions, we do have information which has been discussed widely, but I think it's worth discussing here. Producer Tracy Simpson was over in the US at the Gallifrey 1 fan convention, and she said they're going to start filming Series 13 in the autumn, aiming for a 2021 broadcast. Now, people have said, this will be around September this filming will start, and that's not entirely confirmed, but I think when we're talking the autumn, September's a pretty good as any date to think about, which means that instead of coming back to our screens a year later in, say, January of next year, Doctor Who may come back almost a year and a half later than this series in much later in the year, maybe September 2021 or something like that. It's a hell of a wait.
Yeah. Well, the latest I've heard is that it's going to be coming out autumn next year, but I used to care. You know, that was it Series 7 where Stephen Moffat split it into 7A and 7B?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, the reason I'm doing this is because I lie awake at night worrying about poor little kids who have to wait a whole year for their next Doctor Who fix. And so I'm giving it them only within, I don't know, another 6 months, which I thought was rubbish. And that used to really annoy me. I don't so much mind now. If we get a press release tomorrow saying that Yaz and Ryan are staying for another 2 seasons, then quite frankly they can delay it as long as they like, as far as I'm concerned. I can't say I mind it. Does it? I can understand how people would be annoyed by it, but I think it's possibly the older you get. I mean, now I'm in my late 20s, and years just seem to zip by. You can think, it's outrageous, it's going to be another 18 months before Doctor Who's on again. And then, like that, it's 18 months later.
Yeah.
And I still can't believe that it's the millennium was 20 years ago.
It was. But yeah, look, there are two ways to look at it. The first is that over this past year, in between 11 and 12, I didn't miss it. There was plenty of other TV shows to watch. I'd been quite underwhelmed by the previous series, and so I didn't care as much. This time around, I guess I've enjoyed more of the episodes, and if it ends on a really good, pair of episodes, it could be quite something, and maybe I will think, oh gosh, another year and a half? Wow.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that time will go pretty quickly, so it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I just get frustrated with Chibnall in this way that he's meant to be such a gun TV dude, and he starts off by saying, oh, I'm not doing a Christmas special and I need extra time to get the series up. Okay. Then for his next series, the one we're currently watching, he took even longer. Now he's going to take even longer again for the next one. I think, gosh, if you're not up to the job, Chris, just jog on. Just give it to someone who can do it, Shall we move on to this last story?
You'd think with podcasting, wouldn't you, that I would keep a regular eye on what's happening, but this was a complete surprise to me.
Oh, really?
I try to avoid going onto Twitter and searching for hashtag Doctor Who, because that's the way that you end up with the dross and the lunatics. I just stay on people who I'm already following. But I did hashtag, was it Galley1? And
that's it.
People were showing him. I had no idea he'd been agreed to go to Gallifrey 1. And I quite like that.
And for the listeners at home, we're talking Chris Eccleston appearing at Gallifrey 1.
Oh, not say that. See, I've got these notes in front of me on my screen. I'm forgetting that. Yes, and I quite like that. It saddened me that he didn't want to be involved with the show anymore. Although in a certain way, it pleased me because I could it gave me an opportunity to sneer at people who used to attack him for it. But I'm so pleased that he's getting into conventions now. Mainly not because I particularly want to meet him, but mainly because I don't particularly look forward to an hour-long conversation about working class life in Salford. But just the fact that he's happier with it now. And I suspect that now that he's just, much more at ease with doing these things, whenever he's promoting a new film, it's probably going to be less likely that some hack in the audience will put their hand up and say, "Oh, Chris, are you thinking of returning to Doctor Who?" Which I think really used to annoy him.
Yeah. I think he's just better off in life in general. There was a Guardian article recently. His book came out last year, as I recall.
Yes.
And yet he was still doing press for that book not long ago, like a few weeks ago. I don't know whether his press commitments got cut somehow last year and he's come back to do some more or something. I don't know what. And in that article in The Guardian, he was talking about, and I'm sure this is all covered in the book, he's talking about his anorexia, he's talking about other mental health issues he's had. And it's like, he's not had the happiest of times. And I think some of that's certainly played into his attitude with Doctor Who and such. And so now for him to be able to walk out in front of a crowd at a convention, he's done a few before Gallifrey 1 as well that I've seen on YouTube, little videos people have made. I think good on you, be happy, this is just great. I'm really pleased for him. Let's move on from the news, Doc, to a short topic that I wanted to raise, and then we can rattle off into some listener messages, which will be the guts of this episode. I wanted to talk the elephant in the room, and that's ratings, because we now have overnights at least for the first 8 episodes up to Villa Diodati, and we have consolidateds for 7 of those 8 episodes. And it's a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, when this series started, the usual pile-on happened from haters. A lot of mean stuff gets said. The stats got manipulated very badly. One thing I noticed straight away, people were comparing the overnights of the first episode to consolidated from past series and saying, look, it's below whatever from this other series. And it's like, Yeah, but you're not comparing apples and apples, you know. But that doesn't matter. The haters don't care. But as time has gone on, the show, and I've got to be completely honest here because that's what I try and do. I don't try and be a hater or a rabid fanboy. The ratings have gone down. That typically happens in most series, but now with Diodati, we're down into overnights of 3.86 million. And I think, is the show maybe underperforming a little? I think it might be.
It won't come as a surprise to any of your listeners to hear that I think the show's not doing very well. I've no idea, really. I myself sometimes... I have to watch I don't have to, but I watch every new episode religiously because I've got to turn up at the podcast once a fortnight to review it with my pals. But even, I think, for Diodati, I was up in Manchester with my family for that weekend, and not wanting to inflict that on them, I waited until Monday when I got back to London before I watched it, and that didn't particularly bother me that much. So I imagine that more and more people are doing that, which is why I'm more prepared to accept the argument these days that the overnights are less important. But there's certainly I'm old enough to remember the time when, the idea of, I suppose they call it now water cooler TV, of where, you could imagine half the nation sitting down on a Saturday night to watch something, and the idea that some people say, oh yeah, I watched on my phone on the way to work tomorrow, something like that, takes away a little bit of the, sort of like a collective experience. One of the big things, going back to Eccleston, one of the big things I was in heaven in 2005 during that first series. And one of the things that went with that was not just that I was enjoying the stories, but there was almost a feeling that the whole country was happy that it had come back. And every story was almost, the reviews for it were almost headline news, off the newspapers. Yeah. And the whole thing, we were saying between the final two episodes, who's that voice? Is it Adam or Davros come back to wreak his revenge? And that sort of stuff was headline news in the UK. And there was this lovely feeling that, everyone was liking this important piece of culture, and the idea that people say now, oh well, maybe I'll watch it next week, or maybe I'll wait till the DVD box set comes out. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think it disappoints me slightly.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think familiarity breeds contempt to some degree.
Yes.
But also, some of these stories have underwhelmed. There's no getting around it. And again, I don't try and be a hater, but I do think, to pick up on your thread there, even when Tennant had been in the role for 4 years and was leaving, his regeneration episode got huge ratings. And you compare that to something like Capaldi, the Dr. Falls, I made a note here, had overnights of 3.75 million. And Consolidated got up to, low 5 millions. It's not great for a regeneration story. And a few episodes earlier, Eaters of Light, that's a famous example, had 2.8 million overnights. So when people, again, so to go back to these haters who say, oh, well, it's all Jodie's fault, but wasn't Capaldi wonderful? I say, well, Capaldi had overnights of 2.8 million at times. So, don't get too carried away with that thought.
I really don't care that much. I'm trying to sound dismissive. But my general approach to Doctor Who these days, I really couldn't care whether other people like it or dislike it. It's purely whether it speaks to me. Now, obviously, if let's say the rating has dropped to 3 people and their dog watching it on a Sunday night, then the BBC probably would cancel it. But I don't think there's any sign of that yet. It's not like the BBC have got, some groundbreaking new piece of drama ready to take the place of Doctor Who. Most of their stuff these days is pretty dire.
My biggest takeaway from this conversation we're having, though, is that overnights might not be the thing to look at, and that consolidateds are the new overnights. Taking into account, there's also a 28-day score as well. When we talk consolidated, we're talking a 7-day score. There's also a seldom mentioned 28-day score that often takes the ratings even higher. Yeah.
I don't know whether, someone watching it... I won't watch it tonight, I'll watch it in 4 weeks. Possibly says as much about the popularity as of the show as they say. I'm not watching it at all. I think with these ratings, it's like most things, a lot of things in fandom. People will, if the ratings appear to be dropping, if people who don't like the way the show's going will seize on that.
Mm-hmm.
If that's happening, then the people who love the show will seize on the fact that the consolidated figures are holding up.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll get people who love the show saying ratings don't matter at all. And yet, if the ratings suddenly take a leap upwards, those same people will be saying, oh, just look how great the show must be. Look how the ratings have gone.
Yeah.
No, I don't mind that much. It would be nice to think, that from the UK point of view, it would be nice to think a quarter of the nation was watching it. But I suppose that's the way TV is these days.
Yeah. Shall we move on, Doc?
Yes, find me something fresh to complain about.
Yes, we have now, folks, a bunch of listener messages. These have been emails, tweets, instant messages, all sorts of stuff. And I think you're going to kick us off first, Doc.
Yes, this is where I find out that Rob has invited me onto his podcast so that I can read out people contacting him to say how wonderful his show is. Which is torturing me to death.
It's usually just a single line in each email. They're usually about other topics, Doc.
I did warn Rob that as revenge, we would invite him onto the Diddly Dum podcast and force him to read letters from people saying how wonderful ours is. And once we receive our first of those, we will do it. You've had a communication from Peter Cavanna. Love the show, guys, but please bring back the Chibnall death count. Now, what is this? Is this something counting down to Chris Chibnall's death or something?
No, it's
In
not.
which case, that would definitely make me want to listen to the podcast.
That was something we were doing in the Series 11 episodes. We'd just tally up all the people who'd been bumped off in the episode, and I'd say, now for the Chibnall death count, and we'd play a Wilhelm scream, the blah scream. And people seemed to really like it. We didn't know that at the time, but when we stopped doing it, people started talking about it. But we haven't brought it back because we try and do quick 30-minute hot takes, and so there's no time for it.
Can you imagine trying to do a Moffat death count? You'd have your little piece of paper, you'd say, right, death, death, death. Then as the story progressed, you'd have to keep crossing them out as they kept coming back to life. Oh, Rory's died. Oh, no, he's come back to life. Bill's died. Oh, no, she's come back to life to go and live along the stars with the pilot.
Yes, with a magic pile of space fuel. Moving on, David Clarke says, Hiya, Rob and Dave. First of all, to answer your question, I haven't tied the wifey up to watch Doctor Who from the beginning. I just locked the doors. That's in reference to he started the great, what do they call it? The Great Journey, where you watch all the episodes from the start, Doc.
Oh, I know what you mean, but...
I think they call it The Great Journey. Anyway, David is doing it with his wife, who I don't think is an avid Doctor Who fan, but is certainly doing it with him. So, yeah, a run-through is good. Anyway, David goes on to say, also, William Hartnell just gets better with each story. My favourite so far being Planet of Giants, a very early environment story. Tonight's episode, however, Fugitive of the Jadoon, I thought was brilliant. Jodie has really found her Doctor, a bit more serious than Series 11, which adds to her character and makes her a lot more the Doctor. When Captain Jack appears, I could have kissed him myself, and it's so good the show is keeping these secrets until the actual viewing. A fantastic twist with another Doctor. I'm just going with the flow, but I've got to say she was brilliant and convincing, and though I was a bit worried, because she's a right nasty cow in Holby City. Okay, I don't watch Holby City, so that's new to me. One final thing, the TARDIS console room. Wow, be still my beating heart's a thing of beauty.
That's
Chip
true.
is so Yeah, it was. Chibbers so far has not let me down. Even Orphan 55 was a good watchable episode, discounting Benny, which really got on my tits. Hopefully more Captain Jack to come before the series finale. Steady Dave. And one more thought. The way the show is keeping secrets so well, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a major jaw-dropping shock in episode 10. Maybe a regeneration. Maybe they lie. Love the show, guys. G'day.
Rob emailed me some of these communications listeners a few days ago, just so I could read up on them, know what I was going to be reading out. And I thought, well, I'll read them tomorrow at work at lunchtime. So I emailed them to my work account, and I got in at work next morning to find an email alerting me to inbound profanity detected. So if you're going to write to Rob in the future, can you please not use expressions like, "Then you really got on my tits"?
That's hilarious.
I work for the civil service, you see, and we, I mean, it's government firewalls are particularly bad. I mean, imagine if you worked in our Scunthorpe office, that would be even worse.
Oh, God. So, David Clarke, naughty.
Right. We've had, Rob has had a letter from Sheldon Carnegie. Now, there's a Sheldon who's one of the DWAS people who I thought, oh, Lord, have I got to try and read this out in a Scouse accent? Sort of, until I checked and realised it's another Sheldon.
Yeah, Sheldon's from Florida.
Oh, right. I just listened to your... I'm not going to attempt that. Who was it that said, "I just love your accents"?
Oh, that was an earlier.
Oh, that was someone who posted the Apple review, wasn't it? I just listened to your podcast. This episode knocked me off my feet. I screamed and jumped around my living room like a complete loon. It was really, really good for a few reasons. Having the Jadoon back was fun. Seeing Captain Jack again made me squeal like I can't even describe. But the reveal of Ruth was jaw-dropping. If it fleshes out through the remainder of this season, and the next in a believable way, it will be a masterwork. To be this excited about Doctor Who again fills me with an enveloping joy. How do you pronounce that word, Rob? The thing that you put a letter inside before you lick it and put a stamp on it?
An envelope?
Right, I'd pronounce it envelope. Isn't it strange when you make that into a verb, you don't say enveloping? This fills me with an enveloping joy. That's me enveloping. Strange. I know it's just a TV show, but it's a TV show I adore. Oh, I do feel bad for Ruth's faithful companion. He really did try to get her out of there without having her reveal herself, but met his demise in doing so, poor thing. And did either of you notice the uneasy tension of the two doctors when they entered the lighthouse? They didn't completely trust each other, and the slow pace of the scene captured their uneasiness. I could go on, but I don't want this to have to be a 6-page letter. A note about your streamlining the show. I like it. A short hot take to get your initial reaction with monthly shows to really flesh out observations and insights is a nice structure. Why not try improving things even better by inviting on some of the best podcasters from other podcasts? Oh, that's a good idea. Thanks, Sheldon. Great show as always. Till next week.
That's why we got the 4th best podcast in tonight, Sheldon.
Oh, thank you.
Both these two emails from David Clarke and Sheldon mention Ruth. Doc, your quick thoughts on Ruth? Were you intrigued by her? Did you think some people said, I immediately believed in her more so than Jodie. It took me a few goes with Jodie, or maybe for some of them Jodie's never hit for them. What did you think of Ruth?
Were you spoiled by Ruth?
No, I wasn't.
Well, no, neither was I. And it came as I remember when, she's, Ruth is about to come out of the lighthouse and walk up to the doctor, and while the doctor's on her hands and knees digging in that grave, and she uncovers the top of the TARDIS. That may well be the first time since I was about 10 that I've literally gasped while watching an episode of Doctor Who. And even as Ruth approached her, the penny didn't drop. Now, when she smashes the glass in the lighthouse?
Yes.
And all the golden, filament things are going on the screen. Even then, I'm daft. I was thinking, why are they doing that? That's just a steal from the Chameleon Arch effect. Why can't they think of something new? It didn't even occur to me that she was a Time Lord, or that she was the Doctor. So when she says, "I'm the Doctor," I thought, oh, wow. I didn't think, oh, what an amazing, I've seen some people saying online, oh, what a brilliant, amazing actress she is. So much better than Jodie. I didn't think she was that amazing. I think a few people are just thinking, saying that she was amazing gives me a chance to diss Jodie. Mm-hmm. And without, anyone being able to say that I'm a misogynist because I'm praising another woman. I thought she was pretty good. I could have done without the fact that they ended up in the TARDIS together. I noticed that her cuffs were two different bright colours. And I thought, oh Lord, is that going a bit towards Colin's costume thing? But no, I liked it.
Yeah.
Whether, where she turns out to be in the Doctor's timeline is another issue. I think there is possibly an issue with, diminishing returns. Having done it with John Hurt, who knows how this is a completely different Doctor now. I do wonder if she turns out, as some people say, to be a pre-Hartnell Doctor. I'm not sure it's particularly complimentary to Jodie to say, well, will you take the risk of being the first woman on Doctor Who, and then to have her upstaged by a woman having been younger than her? I think we've come to the conclusion on our podcast that, despite what Chris Chibnall says, she is from a parallel universe. But we think it's possible that it's not that Ruth is from a parallel universe, but it's that Jodie is in a parallel. So Jodie is in the Ruth Doctor's universe when she shouldn't be.
That makes sense.
However that happened. There's something strange, isn't there? I don't know if you feel it like this, but I wouldn't like her to be a pre-Hartnell Doctor.
No, I wouldn't.
Because I don't mind that much with messing with canon, but there's something. Do you know, in the same way that people will still refer to John Hurt as the War Doctor, they don't start moving. All right, in that case, that makes Eccleston. He's actually the 10th Doctor.
Mm.
The first Doctor actually means something. It's inextricably linked to William Hartnell. And if it was suddenly, he actually wasn't the first Doctor, I thought. Also, I'm not entirely sure how interesting it would be. Or say she was a pre-Hartnell Doctor. No, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, there's certainly this new vibe in fandom. It's now very trendy in some circles to say, canon doesn't matter. It's becoming very cool to have this attitude. And while I can appreciate where it comes from to some degree, I think people take it way too far. And I think having some sort of established facts about what you're watching isn't actually weird to desire. It gives you a foundation for your series. Yeah. And the foundation we have is that Hartnell was the Doctor on Gallifrey, decided to run away. His TARDIS turned into a police box. And we've even had it reinforced in a strange sort of way with even Clara helping him escape Gallifrey in one of those Moffat stories where they inserted her into some old Hartnell footage. And I think to go back on all of that would be extraordinary. I know there are some canon things that aren't important. We were talking earlier about Big Finish and what's on TV. And, from that point of view, I can understand people when they say, it doesn't really matter. Of course we should go and see Mary Shelley even though Big Finish did it. Yeah, I get that. But some people are just taking it so far, it's become, as I say, really cool, really trendy to laugh at people who are into canon. And I think that's just taking it too far. And I find that absurd, because I think you should have a foundation for whatever show you're watching, whether it's Doctor Who, Sesame Street, or whatever. Something that with canon that would really piss me off would be, let's say, and this is, I apologise to Sheldon and his friends in America. This is a terrible stereotype about Americans. But let's say the BBC decided we really need to appeal more to the American market. So let's have the Doctor shooting people all the time. As a stereotype. Now that would really piss me off. Because that's a sort of canon. It's not just, did this, it's not like the unit dating controversy, which really I couldn't care about. It's, something fundamental to the show. Yeah, well, that's almost going into the lore as well.
Yes, I suppose
of the
that's
show.
true. That's true.
Yeah.
I couldn't really care less how they resolved the whole 12 regenerations thing. We knew it was going to happen. Otherwise, they'd had to shut down the show. And
Yeah.
let's face it, the only reason that we have the whole idea of the 12 regeneration limit in the first place is that Robert Holmes... See, I'm able to... I can do that. I can step back and quite easily say, and without worrying myself, say, that was just Robert Holmes decided it was a great sounding line. You know, after the 12th regeneration, there is no plan that will prevent death. And it is a great sounding line. And he probably thought, well, we're only on the 4th Doctor. The show's never going to last this long.
That's it.
And maybe if it does, I'll be long dead by then anyway. And I don't mind that. I can easily get over that. What would irritate me is if they, they introduced an entire series arc to try to explain it. Don't make it obvious that you're breaking canon. Just quietly, say that was something convenient. Just sweep it under the carpet.
At the same time, though, what's interesting is Holmes was breaking canon essentially from Morbius, which suggested there had been Doctors pre-Hartnell, and yet fandom seemed to seize more on the 12 regeneration limit than they ever bought into the Doctors we saw in Morbius.
Yes, but I long ago have reconciled myself to the fact that actually all that boasting Morbius was doing during the mind-bending contest, your puny mind is powerless against me. It's just because he's so egotistical. What he didn't realise that while he thought he was winning, actually those faces on the screen were all his previous regenerations, not the Doctor's. So he was boasting while he didn't realise he was losing. So I'm quite prepared to fool myself with that. And that's quite good enough for me. And I'd rather... Please don't try to persuade me otherwise, because I find it quite convenient. But I don't mind that sort of thing. I can quite happily reconcile that to, that was, a producer or a production designer who wasn't aware of, as aware of the history of the show as he should have been.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Well, look, we won't make you dwell on that. We'll move on to the next email. This is from Andy Moore. He says, "Hello, chaps. I was just belatedly catching up with episode 146. All the various Series 12 flashcards have created a bit of a pod jam," he says, for him. And heard you talking about, I'm going to spend my Christmas with a Dalek. I thought you might be interested in this. Every year, my colleague and myself chucked together a Christmas cover version with accompanying video of varying degrees of quality as a thank you for folks who have continued to turn out to support us at gigs over the past year, and as a way to perhaps direct a few quid to charity. This year, music and Who merged when I was covering I Want to Spend My Christmas with a Dalek. I've steered clear of singing it in a dubious child's voice, mind you, and settled instead on a kind of sub-Right Said Fred era Cribbins. Anyway, hope you enjoy it. Thanks for the excellent podcast and belated Happy New Year to you, from Andy. And he sent us a link to it, Doc. I'll try and get some audio up here on the podcast and also link to it on our social media.
Gonna spend my Christmas with a Dalek and hug him underneath the mistletoe. And if he's very nice, I'll feed him sugar spice and hang a Christmas stocking from his big lead toe. And when we both get up on Christmas morning, kiss him on his chromium-plated head.
Is Andy supporting us at gigs? Is he a musician or something?
He is, and this YouTube channel from The Modest, which I believe is his band, is where he has put this cover version, and it's quite fun. With the video clip and everything, it's good fun.
I had a communication from Peter Deadman. Hi guys, good work as always with the hot takes. With 3 more episodes passed, I was planning to do my thoughts of them so I could explore trends and themes. As it turns out, though, these 3 episodes have been something of a showcase of the good and the bad of the season, and the Chibnall era in general. First off, the story with Tesla was actually quite fun. Though parts of it didn't make a huge amount of sense, it was a fairly conventional romp, enlivened by an excellent performance by the actor playing Tesla. Though I do wonder why the Doctor didn't see the need to erase those people's memories, considering he'd done it in Spyfall Part 2 with the 2 women. Well,
Good point.
I think, Peter, you see, you don't need to erase men's memories. They will gradually fade with time. But women, and you must have noticed women's eerie ability to remember something you did wrong 10 years ago.
Yes.
In great detail. The Jadoon jurisdiction reminded me a lot of Utopia, actually. And not just for Captain Jack. What starts out as a normal runaround with monsters ends with a Time Lord emerging from their hiding place. And just like that, I was very impressed with the way the actress built up from a harmless person to someone much more interesting. I sincerely hope we see more of Joe Martin as the Doctor, as I really enjoyed what I saw. The reveal of the buried TARDIS in that glorious neoclassical console room had me even more excited and intrigued than the Master's reveal in Episode 1. Praxius, meanwhile, is, as you said, a pretty mixed bag. It looks pretty, even if some of the bird CGI was a bit wonky. It was well acted, even if the Doctor went back a bit to her Season 11 portrayal. Yet somehow it was just incomprehensible. These episodes pretty much typify this season and Jodie's era. There's some good imagination, things look pretty damn good, and there's some interesting twists and good acting. But on the other hand, there's too much rushing about for no purpose, needless technobabble, and too much explaining the plot. As one of the characters said in Praxius, chat, 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 when Yaz and Graham were over-explaining. That is quite ironically funny. And since everyone seems to have a theory on the Joe Martin Doctor, here's mine. Some sort of parallel he clearly just stolen this idea from me. Some sort of parallel reality has been created, possibly by this lone Cyberman, where this Doctor is an alternate version of Jodie's incarnation. Likewise, the Master we saw is an alternate universe version of one of the others. This neatly avoids any mess with putting these incarnations in the existing canon. We'll see how it all plays out in time. Here's to the rest of the series, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And again, we don't know if Chibnall's lying when he says an alternate universe isn't in there. I find it hard to reconcile any other way, although I do have other theories. They just don't, as I tease them out further and further, they just don't hold water. So I don't know whether he's going with something that won't hold water in the end, or whether he's done something genius, or whether he's just lying. Maybe it is just lying.
I suspect because he's been said, isn't he, Chibnall? Oh, the Joe Doctor definitely isn't a parallel universe Doctor. But then he's also said everything you hear is a lie, hasn't he?
That's something like that, yeah.
I suspect she is.
Yeah, I would like that, because I think it makes her a legit Doctor in her own right. You know, rather than trying to force her into some timeline that just doesn't work in our universe, so to speak.
Yeah.
To have her be the Doctor in her universe means she is absolutely the Doctor, and it's wonderful. And you know, Big Finish can go to town with stories about her and all that sort of stuff. You know, and it's not some sort of fake out or anything that's less than real. I quite like the idea of an alternate universe myself. Anyway, moving on. Millie McKenzie. Hello, Millie. Millie writes to us on Facebook from time to time. She says, "Hi, guys. I've been listening to your podcast since I came across it after Spyfall, and am slowly working my way through your back catalogue. Your conversation is always intelligent and remarkably polite." Oh, that's lovely. "It amazes me how you don't always agree, but you seldom get heated and you appreciate each other's opinions. Very refreshing. But part of me also wants to hear you have a full-on scrap."
Yes.
"I don't see all the issues you both had with this episode," and by this episode, I think she means Praxius. "I loved it for the fun and excitement of it, and the plot holes don't bother me. I want to yell at you and say you're wrong, but your calm understanding has taught me to accept your opinions and allow you the occasion to go and view it again." Wink. Well, thank you, Millie. I'll get around to it at some stage. It's not high on my rewatch list, I've got to say, if we're talking Praxius.
I can't imagine you and Dave having a full-on scrap while a crowd of podcasters stands around yelling, "Fight! Fight! Fight! Fight!" Did you see that in school playgrounds?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it would attract other people to come and watch.
Yeah. Shane Rofe has been in touch. Good day, chaps. I'm not saying that. It's far too Australian.
G'day, chaps.
Well met, fellows. Haven't yet listened to your latest hot take, but hope to over the weekend, so I thought I'd get in now. Who knows? No pun intended. With how time works, maybe I already have by the time you read this. Anyway, I liked Praxeus and I didn't think I would. This season, at the time of writing anyway, has been a refreshing change. I'm finding each week I'm enjoying my favourite show more and more. I've never wavered, even when less than enthused by some of the last series. But to see the current crop of stories... Oh yeah, we're back, baby. Where's Shane from?
He's Australian.
That's, yes.
That's the least Doc sentence I have ever heard you say. Oh yeah, we're back, baby.
My version of that would probably be, oh yes, this is slightly acceptable, I believe. Anyway, I was less than overwhelmed by the trailer for Praxeus, but on watching, I loved it. The multi-location, companions and Doctor split up on different parts of the planet reminded me of some of those McCoy New Adventure books that were set in the near future. I'm really getting a Barry Letts feel for this season, with yet another pollution story popped in, not long after Orphan 55. I have no problem with these types of tales. Doctor Who is what got me thinking about the planet, now as a wee sprite. I also liked how the Doctor threw in a reference to the Autons. For once it was a subtle reference that paid homage to the past, without it detracting from the story. I wonder how many current viewers would still even remember Rose, or have watched it, let alone know about those Third Doctor encounters. It was a little bit like having the Macra in Gridlocked. Finally, well, two finallys actually. First finally, I'm so glad Jodie's Doctor is, I don't know, being more doctory. It's really starting to give weight to one of my arguments to critics of her first season. I felt her first season was a mishmash of stories that writers had written with pictures of other Doctors in their heads, like Tennant or Smith. I had heard Chibnall had asked for a generic Doctor, so as to keep the gender thing secret for as long as possible. Now I feel they're writing for Jodie playing the Doctor, and she's fantastic, pun intended. This is me. I'm not sure I understand that. Why would writing a generic Doctor help conceal who he'd cast? I mean, does that mean avoid writing scenes that have the Doctor multitasking? I'm not sure why. Because let's say they were writing for the Capaldi Doctor before Peter had been unveiled, and if they were going to be writing him really, really grumpy, but still, it wouldn't have told any of us that it was going to be Peter Capaldi, would it?
No, that's true. That's true. I guess Shane's coming from the point of view that maybe they just hadn't been told the name, so they couldn't think of specific attributes. But you're right. The grumpy example's a good example. They could have said, "I'll just make this Doctor like a, I don't know, a children's television presenter," and they could have written the Jodie Doctor. But I digress. Let's move on.
My final finding is regarding one other thing I've liked about this season so far. It seems like we're dropping into adventures. In the Tessa story and this one, the Doctor and crew have already been up to something, so that they're already onto events while they're going. I love that. I've always wanted to see a story where we land at the culmination of an event we haven't seen, and the Doctor, separated from her companions, has to use the TARDIS to get somewhere to complete something and get her friends back. But in a throwback to the old TARDIS, she's whisked away into a different adventure. When that's resolved, we see her return to the previous adventure, but we don't see the outcome, and next week it's something completely different. I call these types of tales life with the Doctor, the missing adventures, so to speak. Anyway, that's my take for this week. Cheers, as always, for your podcast, and catch you later. Shane. I suppose did that happen in Praxeus in a way in that the Doctor mentions at the beginning, doesn't she, that she's been dropping them off on worlds and then leaving them and disappearing so she can go and search for Gallifrey.
Pretty much,
or
yeah.
rather, search for what's happened. Search for the Master, hasn't she?
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, I like this idea of Shane's. I like the idea of coming in at the end of a story and It'd just be something a bit different. Mix it up a bit. All right, moving on. I have a note from Steve Panozzo, noted Australian cartoonist. He says, "Hi, mate. I don't think Praxeus was as clumsy an agenda driver as, say, Orphan 55. The subject of microplastics is pretty important, and in terms of its execution, it was only as obvious as, say, the Green Death, to be frank. I don't hear too many people venting their spleen on that classic gem, except to praise it, yet the green message was pretty blatant all the way through." I won't stop there, Doc, because that's probably an interesting conversation for us to have, a mini conversation. The Green Death versus Orphan 55 or Praxeus, do you see a difference? They've both got messages, but is it how they're told?
I see what Steve's saying, but I don't agree. I'm sure some do, but most fans I know who complain about wokeness, I've really not got the time to spare to complain about this sort of thing, have no problem with the actual message, but they're just getting pissed off at the patronising way it's being delivered. In Chris Chibnall's trademark "tell, don't show" manner.
Yeah,
it's a bit like I always think it's a bit like the Third Doctor ending Planets of the Daleks with that lecture to the Thals about you must realise that war isn't fun. I mean, I think that comes across as incredibly patronising. The idea of the Thals, isn't it, that they're sharing a planet with the Daleks. Quite how they've developed their own space technology, I don't know. But you think they might be aware that actually war isn't a good thing, particularly as, that I won't get into Genesis. And that comes across, oh, Lord, that is so patronising, without people coming back to you and saying, oh, so you're in favour of war, are you? You think war's a funny thing. What I find that most people object to about the whole, and I'm using air quotes here, woke thing, about people being, say, oh, so-and-so is very woke, isn't he or she, is not, I disagree with their opinion. It's, I think they're expressing it, the way they express it, they come across it as smug pains in the arse. The reason why nobody calls Barry Letts woke, or a social justice warrior, or a virtue signaller, is because in my opinion, is because by and large, he managed to put his messages into the show without making us feel that he was lecturing us.
Yeah.
I think you'll notice a great majority, and this is something I'm editing our next podcast at the moment, and we're talking about this at great length. The great majority of people complaining about wokeness, or, this sort of thing, aren't saying that global warming is a myth.
No, not all of them anyway.
At least they're not prepared to admit that. It's the way it comes across, they're just sick of being lectured about it by someone who's no particular expert on the subject, and who, at an age when Greta Thunberg is doing what she's doing, was devoting his life to mugging Jane Baker on TV. There's no reason why Chris Chibnall should have any more, knowledge about the problems of global warming than I do in my general life, just, reading newspapers. So why am I taking lectures from him?
Yeah.
He's not an expert, so he shouldn't lecture me. What arguably he's an expert in is producing drama, so he should do it via drama. Show, don't tell.
Yeah. And there's even fans who are saying whatever the topic is, they believe in global warming, they believe in lots of plastics are in the ocean and that's a problem, whatever. But they would rather come to Doctor Who and just have, as Dave would say, a fun adventure in time and space, because they're trying to get away from real life for, 45 minutes.
Yes, I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, and there's that point of view out there as well, where people don't even want to see the messages.
And if it's done subtly, then I think that can come across. And, you can have your cake and eat it. Both, get the message and be in a piece of purely escapist drama. It's just, I don't think people like the idea of being lectured, particularly on. I think it doesn't work in two ways. People who already know all this stuff and are already on board, I certainly feel they're being patronised, and people who are let's say global warming deniers, they're not going to be. They're going to take offence at this because they're going to think, oh, I'm being lectured to by someone who thinks I'm stupid. So they're going to, they're not going to be changed there. I just think,
Yeah, well, that's where some of the woke accusations come from, because people think, well, half the audience they're preaching to already knows this, and the other half isn't going to be convinced by it, so why are they actually doing it? Is it just to show their woke credentials? That's another argument that gets made.
Yes, I think that's what it is a lot of the time.
Yeah. Anyway, we continued on that for longer than I thought. To get back to Steve's email, he says, fans forget that Doctor Who has historically been fairly full-on when it comes to educating its audience about what we're doing to ourselves and the planet. Sadly, some viewers are only reacting to the way the Murdoch press and Sky News have recently programmed to, calling the green message the result of a politically correct agenda. How about waking up? Doctor Who was railing against racism as far back as the Ark, the Savages and the Silurians, and attacking apartheid in The Mutants and dictating terms on slavery in Carnival of Monsters. How about Nazi parallels in Genesis of the Daleks? It's pretty obvious in its condemnation of drug trafficking in The Nightmare of Eden and The Caves of Androzani. And the whipping TV violence got in Vengeance on Varos is well documented. Those whingers should rewatch The Green Death and grow a spine.
And I think those are good examples. Does the Doctor ever tell us in Nightmare of Eden that drug trafficking is a bad thing?
No.
No. We see here's a guy. Oh, what's he called? It's strange. This the only thing I can remember of him is he was played by an actor called Louis Viander. And the only reason I can remember that is because he gets mentioned in the Tom Baker years. Here's this guy who's playing around with drugs for whatever reason. And there's that, which I think is an incredibly powerful scene myself at the end, where they're arresting Trist, and he says to the Doctor, "Oh, Doctor, you're a scientist. You must understand what I was doing, you know." That's my German accent. And the Doctor doesn't turn to him and say, "You've been trafficking drugs. You're a complete villain. This is bad." He's pleading to the Doctor. The Doctor doesn't even look at him. He just very quietly says, "Go away." He says, "Go away." He says, "Go away." And that, to me, would have affected me far, on the assumption that at that age I was pro the dealing of drugs. That just the very fact you're a kid. You see, the Doctor disapproves of. Here's Doctor's the good guy. Here's someone the Doctor is fighting against. Therefore, he must be the bad guy.
Yeah.
Therefore, drugs are a bad thing.
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean. But if Tom had turned to the camera and given us that lecture, I think I would have felt, and I'm sure kids can work this out for themselves. Oh, I'm being lectured to here. Yeah. I'm being told something. I think that Eden's a good example of the way it should be done.
Yeah, exactly. Famously, on a recent episode, I brought up Frontier in Space and the way they have political prisoners locked up on the moon. The Pertwee never turns to camera.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking that when I was listening to you doing that, by the way.
Yeah, Pertwee never turns to camera and says how bad it is to lock up political prisoners. You can just see it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on.
You've had a message from John Shaw, who says, "Hi, Rob and Dave. I've just listened to your January monthly, and as always, it was a pleasure, as are the hot takes. Have you ever considered using the Diddly Dum podcast as a role model? You could become even better." All right. As I type this, I am willing Amazon to deliver season 26 first thing Monday morning. So no, I was not one of the lucky few who got theirs on Saturday. It was great to hear that, like me, you lads can see where the team were going with number 7. I think he means Doctor Number 7.
Yes.
And I was more interested in Dave's comment. And I was even more interested in Dave's comment that season 14, yes, it's on order, will be the third Doctor Number 4 box. And as yet, no 60s releases. This got me thinking we might have a long wait. And here is why I say that. 1. None of the 60s seasons is complete. So looking at what they do have, they would have to animate Marco Polo, and possibly, depending on the licensing, the Reign of Terror, in order to release season 1. animate The Crusade for Season 2, or The Space Pirates for Season 6. These are the 3 seasons with the least work to do, but unless they have been working on one or more for a while, it will take time. 2. Will they look or sound better on BD?
Blu-ray disc, I think.
Oh, right. I know the likes of Spearhead from Space look amazing on Blu-ray from 1969, but it took a lot of work over the years by the old restoration team, and it was shot on film for transmission in the new 625-line PAL system, not the old 405 lines used for the first 6 seasons. Not to mention a lot of the masters were lost, and the stories that were recovered were telesync film copies that the restoration team had to do an amazing amount of work on, including using their vidfire process to make them presentable on DVD. Getting them to 1080p will be a Herculean task, given the BBC no longer has the help of the restoration team. Oh, is that true? Did they expand them?
I don't know. I assume it is for him to make the claim. I guess with less output, they haven't needed them. They were always volunteers, though, I think. I don't think they were ever like an official thing, were they?
Yeah, possibly. I don't know. I think, they must have had... I don't think they were just a few guys in their bedrooms, was it? It wasn't...
Oh, no, it was more than that.
3. The length of the seasons is so long. The episode count in the old days was astonishing, even if it's worth doing the work to remaster to full high definition. The calculations alone will take hundreds of years. 4. What about the fans who have already been buying the animations on DVD and Blu-ray? Will they buy again? Sorry, daft question, of course I will. Of course we all, when we were all buying the Blu-ray collections, despite the fact that we've got the complete collection on DVD.
Yeah. I'm giving my DVDs away to a mate, actually.
Is this a mate who's too poor to afford Blu-rays?
Well, no, he's a mate who likes Doctor Who enough to really appreciate having it on DVD, but couldn't give a toss about some extra features and maybe some better clarity on screen on Blu-ray.
Well, I've been longing for years purely for the desire for shelf space. And when I'm moving house, the number of boxes full of DVDs I have to move. I've been thinking, if they only had, some of the DVD box sets like for Matt Smith's first season.
Yeah.
And it's almost the size of a slightly thick paperback book, isn't it? Not one of these big things they've done. And I've always if only they did one of those for a full season. Then I could have, maybe half a shelf and have the entire, plus Blu-rays, the entire Doctor Who collection. And they started bringing these out. But unfortunately, when I'm doing the podcast, I want to do, say, record a clip on my PC from, I don't know, Brain of Morbius. I'll get the DVD out. But my PC doesn't read Blu-rays.
Oh, no.
So I've now got all the DVDs and all the Blu-rays coming out, so I've got about 3 times the shelf space. Back to what John's saying, I think the BBC will stick to alternating Tom and the others, leaving the 60s for now. I hope I'm proven wrong. What do you think? All the best, John Shaw. P.S. Quick question. Both you and Dave rave every week about... You see, this is the importance of punctuation. Both you and Dave rave every week about Bradley Walsh. Do you know how I read that?
How?
I assumed that Mr. Kitchen had a nickname. And it was both you and Dave rave every week about Bradley Walsh.
Dave rave?
There's someone who was it over here used to be called Dave the Rave. I thought I know that Dave.
I don't know.
Dave
I'm podcasting with him now, apparently.
Both you and Dave rave every week about Bradley Walsh, quite rightly so. Did you get to see his other shows in Australia? His game show, The Chase, and Breaking Dad, The Road Trip with his son. Did you get to see that? I mean, I imagine that game shows don't really transfer in the way that drama does, do they, between countries? I mean, you'll tend to say, "Oh, that's a good idea. We'll do our own version of that," don't you? Rather than taking, a full set of another country's game shows ready.
Yeah. I think the chase might be done locally, but we do have a lot of UK game shows air here on free to air, like what's the Jimmy Carr one about cats? It's like
Cats Have 9 Lives.
Oh, whatever it is.
So
it's got like a double banger name, and there's a lady who draws on a board, and I don't know what it's about. But QI and all these things hosted by Rob Brydon that always seem to have David Mitchell on the panel. They're quite popular. Yeah. We have that.
Oh, well, I love that one. Would I Lie to You?
Would I Lie to You?
That's one of my favourites, though,
Yeah, no, we get that. Look, Breaking Dad, I don't think's on free-to-air. It could be on, like, Foxtel or, like, one of our cable services or something like that I don't subscribe to. I just use free-to-air, and then I have Netflix and Amazon Prime and stuff like that. So I don't know what's going on Foxtel. It could be there. I don't know. The other question, though, was about leaving the 60s episodes for now and hoping to be proven wrong. I think they'll do a 60s at some stage, maybe sooner than later, and I'm going to plump for Troughton Season 6. I think they'll animate the Space Pirates and put that out. There's my tip.
Sheldon Carnegie gets back to us and says, "So, I just watched the Haunting episode for about the 4th time. That'll be Villa Diodati, won't it? I seriously enjoyed it. Prior to the Cyberman, it had my attention. Then after the Cyberman, I couldn't think of looking away. We've mainly seen people prior to cyber conversion or after, but the notion of someone being in the in-between phase and being a bad person is a refreshing twist. Did you all happen to catch the slow, foreboding steps of Ashad as he was walking into the room with the baby? Those steps until he reached the chest where they were hiding were, for me, some of the tensest moments. Would they dare kill a baby? My mind raced. I'm going to make a half-assed prediction. Those 2 ghosts are timeless children. Ha-ha! It was worth a shot. Now that's interesting. Anyway, I could go on, but you have a show to finish. Yes, we do. All my best to you, Sheldon.
Yeah, that's good. And I thought Ashad was a really good character. My only complaint in our episode was I just think they showed too much of his face. I liked seeing his face. Yeah. I just think it was a little bit too much. So thank you so much, Sheldon. Some really, really good thoughts there. Because Doc took my email, I'm going to take his now. And this is from Owen Prince, or Kellogg's24, on Twitter. He says, "My take on the haunting of Villa Diodati. Welcome back, Doctor Who. Period drama, spooky, a dive into history, an old classic adversary, and the Doctor with moral complications. I was starting to feel blah about this season, but now I'm fully invested again. Phew."
I'm glad that people are liking it. It's just doesn't. I don't feel furious if people like something I dislike. But
are you giving us a tip off as to what you say on your episode coming up?
Well, shall we say it's one of the 3 of us fighting a rearguard action.
Interesting.
It's more the would I lie to you? Can you hear me one that sparks the most debate on ours for shall we say personal life experiences of some of us that have linked into it.
Yeah, that did raise a lot of controversy, and even the BBC putting out a statement. That was really interesting.
That's interesting, isn't it? That's now 2 press releases the BBC's released, specifically in order to calm down fan speculation. First they released the one saying, "Oh, this is why the Doctor didn't try to comfort Graham about his cancer." What was the one they issued a few weeks ago? Was it Chris Chibnall saying, "Oh, she's not an alternate universe Doctor"?
That's right, yeah.
That's strange, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much to all those listeners for writing in, whether on Twitter, Facebook, or wherever, email, that old thing. It's really, really good. This is our 2nd episode to be doing this sort of feedback. It's around the time of year that we do a lot of this, because you're hearing us week to week on the hot takes. So thank you, Doc, for helping to read those. I know some of them can be quite long.
Well, talking of long, we've gone on for a while here, haven't we? Do you edit much on your podcast? And I don't mean as in, just taking away someone sneezing or coughing, but editing down, shall we say?
In the early days, we used to quite a lot, but now Dave and I have got kind of some weird ESP going on, and we know roughly what we want to say in what kind of time. And if we record for an hour 10, we cut it to an hour 5. We hardly cut anything, and that's usually just coughing and people, making a mistake reading something and rereading it,
We tend to end up at the end with about 2.5 hours of recording, and after it's edited, it usually gets reduced by about an hour. That's mainly Mark nipping out for a fag for 3 minutes, or anyone who wants to listen to episode 127 that's coming up about Can You Hear Me? I come up with a moral quandary at one point, and I'm trying to think of the right thing to say. Now, when I edit that, all those pauses get wiped out because I imagine they'll bore people. Well, the thing is, that works particularly well as a dramatic pause. That I'll keep it in, otherwise I'll knock them out. Do you spend long editing?
Look, I think it usually takes twice as long as whatever the episode is, because generally I'm going back and listening to everything twice, once when I hear it the first time and once after I've edited it.
I envy you. Are you, Dave, usually in the same room when are you Skyping?
No, because he's in Melbourne and I'm in Sydney.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So it's all done that way. In the first time Dave and I Skyped, he had his video on too, but we've never done that again because I don't have a camera, so it seemed pointless for me to see Dave, but he doesn't see me. But in the meantime, I did want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I know it's early-ish in the morning for you as we record.
It's 10:15 now, so it's not too bad.
That's because we've been recording for a long time. But yeah, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to your next episode of Diddly Dum to hear your thoughts, particularly on Diodati. That's the one that I've really enjoyed. I tend to like hearing what people think of the episodes I enjoy, because if it's one I didn't enjoy, I either don't want to hear people extol its virtues, or if they're agreeing with me that it was bad, I don't need to hear it. But the ones I like to hear people comment on for some reason.
Oh, I much prefer it when people agree with me that it's bad. I mean, but really, really viciously.
Yeah.
I'll watch an episode and I'll think, I hated that, but I can't quite put my finger on why. So I'll listen to a few other Doctor Who podcasts, and someone will, let's crystallise it with a bit of vicious invective. Oh yes, that's I'll use that. Right then.
Well, on that note, thank you again for being on the show. For our listeners, we've got 2 more episodes of the Hot Takes to go, which won't have Dave on them. He remains overseas. And I can exclusively reveal we'll have Stephen from New to Who joining me for those 2 episodes. Ooh. So look out for those. And Dave will return in our end of March episode, where we'll be talking about all of Series 12. You'll get to hear what he thought of the last 2 episodes, and we'll do one of our famous series wraps. So that's all in the future now, yeah.
Okie dokie.
All right, thanks again, Doc. Much appreciated.
Ta-ta all.
Ta-ta. Bye-bye. You've been listening to The Doctor Who Show, the podcast where too much Doctor Who is barely enough. Subscribe to us on iTunes or listen through the website at www.thedwshow.net. Write to us at hello@thedwshow.net or send us a quickie on Twitter @thedwshow. Facebook.com/The DW Show is also a good place to find us if you're so inclined. Our version of the Doctor Who theme arranged by George Locke. Look him up on YouTube, folks. This podcast is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. Doctor Who, all names and sounds, and any other related items are trademarks and/or copyrights of the BBC. All other trademarks and trade names are properties of their respective owners. The official Doctor Who website can be found at www.bbc.co.uk/Doctor Who.